So continue how to implement the push function. Right, so you see this value will be in where? This value we need to assign to our array is where? Right, it's size, right? So size is the location where I will assign the data we push in. So we're pushing this data to the location. Size is the location, the index from our array. And after we finish, we do what? Right, we do the plus plus. So that's why here, either way, you want to do the plus plus for the post increment, or you want to do the plus plus later. Okay, so either way, you see that's where your location you push, right? Yes, sounds like right. But however, how about if we ran out of the capacity? Right, so that's why here, just like our array, we have two things, right? Before we can add the new value, we need to check if the size greater or equal to, we should call the capacity setter function from the private first. Then we can add. So even we didn't implement that one yet, but you know the capacity setter function, we want to enlarge the capacity, right? The capacity for the array. So later we will show you. So here the same thing, right? You see here we either do what? Right. So usually we just give the capacity is double, right? So that's why you pass in the new capacity value. Right. So then later when we implement our capacity setter function, we need to remove, we need to create a new array with the double capacity. We need to copy the old value from the old array. Then we will relink the array. But one thing is here, we will take care that's in the capacity setter function. So that's why here you see in our push. In our push, the first thing we need to check, if the size is greater or equal to the cap, that's enlarge the capacity. Yeah, or we say we double our capacity. So we need to double the array capacity. So after the capacity is good, right? So now I can assign the new push value into the correct location. So that will be at the size location. But also we need to increment by 1. So that's the push. Okay, so after you finish the push now, can you understand why now our pop will be look like this? Right, you see here. Again, we back to see this one. You push A, push B, push C, push D. So when we want to pop, so pop actually you don't need to give them any parameter. They just pop the latest one, right? So we pop latest one. Actually, we don't need to really do anything. We just need to decrement the size. So then you see here, like just like you have an index using the size index to access whatever you can access. For example, you see when you have your D's here, right? Okay, so then when you pop, actually pop sometimes depends on your pop. Some pop implementation, they may need to return the value here. But our pop, we just do the void function. So we don't do anything. So we pop just mean, hey, not this one. So when we don't hear this D, just mean after we pop the D, C will be the last one. We will be assets, right? So that's why here for your pop, that's just simply to decrement the size. So after you decrement the size, what they can access to push, they will change the location. But here, sometimes you decrement the size, we need to be careful. So that's why you need to be careful is before you can decrement, we need to make sure the size is greater than 0. Then I can decrement. Otherwise, if size equal to 0, I do nothing. So that's the pop. Okay, so if you're still a little confused about the pop, let me show you the next one. How about we think about the peak? Okay, so peak, we will return the constant reference. So now we're back to the PowerPoint. Can you show me here? For example, I push A, B, C, and D, right? D will be the latest one we push in. So if this one I want to pick, which one I should see? Right. If I pick, I will pick the D, right? Because D is the latest one I will see. So that's why I need to know this D location. Can you tell me this D location is what? The index 0, 1, 2, 3. So actually, that means the size is 4. D actually located at 3. Right. So that's why every time we pick what? We pick, actually, when we do the pick, right? We just need to pick the latest one. But the latest one actually, so the latest one in the stack is not size, right? Because you see size, this one, size is 4, but 4 is, our index start from 0. Size is 4, 4 is the next location. So that's why every time when we do the pick actually is the size minus 1 location. So that's why every time you see here, when I want to pick the value, then I need to give you the latest one you push, right? So all the time they will be in the location is size minus 1. Okay, so that's why when we do the pick, we return size minus 1. Is that okay? Actually, not quite okay. The reason is what? The reason is we need to be careful if whenever we want the user to pick. But actually the pick is what? If the size is less than or equal to 0, I have no item. So then 0 minus 1, I will have the negative index, right? So that's why here we need to be careful. I can return size minus 1. But one thing is what? Okay, so this one is we need to be careful. Our size should be what? Greater than 0. Right? So if the size greater than 0, that means I have element in there. So I return size minus 1. Otherwise, if size not greater than 0, what should I do? Yeah, because you see, you return a reference. So we still need to have to return something. So that's why usually here you just need to give them something. But here, because we just give them the reference, pick is you cannot touch anything. So you can just return. Before we return dummy, that's because it's possible we will using the setter function to allocate that location. But here, because that's the pick is the getter function, so that's why actually we can give them any value, right? So then just if size equal to 0 or less than 0, that value actually is not really correct. But anyway, if size less than 1, you shouldn't assume your pick will be correct. So that's why here that's the pick. So you will see if we want to pick is the size minus 1 location is the latest object we add in. So we need to check if the size greater than 0. Otherwise, we return any location. Actually, here is any location is okay as long as they are valid data. So because this, you can see, now you can understand. Actually, when we want to pick or pop, actually they only affect the size value. So that's why when we do the size, we only decrement by 1. Okay, now, so after you understand the push and the pick, how about we do the capacity setter function? So that one is a private one. So right, you can see the capacity setter function actually will be exactly the same when you do the dynamic array, right? So that's why I want to show you here. Capacity setter function from our dynamic array, actually we do this way. When you do the capacity setter function, okay, so right, you see we need to have a new cap. So this cap we will have, you see, before when we do a dynamic array, we need to have the limit because we are not sure the user will enlarge or shrink the size. So that's why we have the limit. The limit, you just see cap or original cap, which one is smaller. If this cap is smaller, see, we just copy the value, so we don't have that. Then if this cap is smaller, we copy the value, then the rest of that we will have the default value. Or you see, only do this one. So before we have the limit, that's because we are not sure our capacity will be shrink or enlarge. But for this example, you see, when we do the capacity setter function, the only situation this capacity setter function will be called is in the push. And also, we always double the capacity. So that means the capacity always what? Always enlarge. So that's why here, this one actually we don't need the limit. We always enlarge the capacity. So that's why when we copy over, when we copy over from the old array to the new array, we're using the current capacity, this cap. So then after we copy over the old one, so then the rest of that, right? So the rest of that, the same thing. It's only start from this cap until the new cap. So then we give them the default value. So after we copy over, right? So we delete our value array. So then we assign our temp to the value array. So then don't forget, now we need to update our cap. So actually this one is our capacity setter function. Sounds good? So now the most important thing is you guys really need to understand all your code, how you implement that. Before in dynamic array, our capacity setter function, we can be enlarge the capacity or shrink the capacity. So that's why we have the for loop condition, we have the limit to add. But this one, sometimes if your capacity only double, right? You see here, the only way we will call the capacity setter function is in the push. So we always double. Okay, so that's why here, since your capacity setter function only used for the enlarge, so that's why you don't need the limit. Okay, you don't need to check which one is smaller for this cap or the cap in argument. So that's why I just do this one. Okay, so after you got this capacity setter, right? So now we go back to see our header file. Anything we're missing? Okay, so then here, no. Now, actually, be careful. All the time, your library shouldn't have the using namespace because one thing is, unless you have string, but you don't display anything. Okay, so no library because we don't do the meaning. Okay, so now continue. Okay, so here's our template, right? Okay, so now we finish capacity setter. We finish constructor function. We finish the destructor function. So the push, pick, and the pop. Okay, so now you know the clear, right? So clear actually only make the size equal to 0. So that's why I don't care all the value. We just start from the beginning. So then we return the size. Okay, so empty, we just using a conditional operator. Okay, so right, so we only have copy constructor and the assignment operator, right? So should I show you about the copy constructor and the assignment operator? Actually, I won't show you. Why? Because your copy constructor and assignment operator will be exactly the same when you implement your dynamic array. Because the most important thing is you need to recreate your value array. So then you just need to assign your cap equal to the original stack cap. So the only thing for your copy constructor and the assignment operator function different from your dynamic array is, don't forget, we have the size we need to make the copy. So that's why I won't show you how to do that. They will be very similar to what